Hello, Psych 101 students, and welcome to Learning Objective 10 of Module 3. In this final learning objective, we'll look at how do emotions support social relationships. Actually, a quick note, you see I've got 9.11, 911, and 912 listed here. And they are both listed in the study guide, but I will only be covering 911, and it turns out that you will only be tested on 911. So you can skip the 912 section if you wish to, as I am going to. So we have a fairly short learning objective 10 to go through now. I believe it's just 4 slides after this title slide. So let's begin. Okay, where am I? Oh, yeah. You use facial expressions to interpret emotions. We look at people's faces. Um, Emotions provide information about the importance of stimuli to personal goals, and they prepare us for actions aimed at achieving those goals. So, for example, when we're being attacked in one way or another, we feel fear. And this emotion of fear would motivate us to either flee or to fight back. Um, so, emotions can be motivating, as in that case. Emotions also help to promote social relationships with others. Charles Darwin has argued that expressive aspects of emotion are adaptive because they communicate how we are feeling. And they would have been especially important, the display of emotions before humans developed language, because there was a time in early human history where we did not have language as we have it today. And so to display, to your tribe that an opposing tribe was about to attack you, I mean, you would look very scared and probably make some hand gestures or whatnot, but they would read the importance in your face. They would see the fear and know that there is something happening. So we one this was a especially important form of communication when we did not have you know language yet. Okay. The eyes and mouth. Oh, we convey emotional information by means of our eyes and mouth, mainly, at least within the face, and but we also rely on context cues. We see faces in context that give us cues about what emotion a person is experiencing. So, an example is shown in these pictures here. Research participants were shown images like these ones and asked to categorize them as showing anger, fear, pride, disgust, sadness, um, surprise. Okay, sorry, anger, fear, pride, sadness, disgust, surprise, or happiness. So they had to choose one of those. And so, if you look at the first picture in A, this photo is pairing a sad face with a sad posture. And so when you participants saw the face in this context, most participants categorized the expression as sad. However, in photo B, the photos pairing the same sad face. It's actually basically the same face they've taken, and so it's a sad face. But his gestures are indicating a fearful posture. When the face appeared in this context, most participants categorized the expression as fearful. So even though we tend to use facial information of the eyes and the mouth to read people's emotional expressions, we do heavily rely on other context cues, such as body language cues, as shown in this study here. Um, okay, let's go on. Facial expression across cultures. Research has found general support for cross-cultural identification of some facial expressions, meaning that the expressions appear the same from one culture to another, and that you can identify the facial expressions of people from a completely different culture. But as it says here, it is for some facial expressions. Support is expressions, excuse me. Support is strongest for happiness. And look, you can see pictures of happiness here. It doesn't matter what culture they're coming from, they're so easy to identify. If you had to pick, an emotion, I'm sure you would pick happiness for all these. I mean, so a lot of overlap. Is it from one culture to another? Every culture displays happiness with a smile. It's weakest, however, for fear and disgust. There are more differences from one culture to another for those two emotions. So a smile indicates happiness across cultures. And the evidence that facial expressions for certain emotions are universally interpreted from one culture to another suggests that facial expressions of some emotions are biologically innate, meaning that um, you are born to smile when you're happy. You don't learn it from watching your parents or others smile when you're a baby. You are born, it's biologically based, it's innate, it's in our DNA. And this is why you see overlap of happiness and smiling from one culture to another, is it's not a learned behavior. No one teaches us, hey, when you're happy, do this, and then showing you a smile. I mean, if it was learned behavior, there would be some cultures that do it differently. Some cultures maybe would stick out their tongue when they're happy or something like that. But turns out that the evidence strongly suggests that it is innate. We are born knowing how to smile when we're happy. Okay. Um, However, there are subtle differences. Excuse me, I just can't read today. There are subtle aspects of emotional expression that do vary across cultures, indicating that the meanings of some emotional expressions are learned. So it's not all or nothing. We know that some expressions we are born with, and once again, the evidence for happiness is the strongest in smiling. Um, other emotional expressions we learn from our society, from our culture. Research suggests that facial expression of pride is innate, um, but not just facial expression. It also physical body signs as well. So researchers found that isolated populations with minimal Western contact accurately identified the physical signs of pride. So what they're talking about is they went out and found tribal cultures that haven't watched TV and don't have the internet and haven't been exposed to a lot of Western culture and so whatnot, and yet you show them pictures of somebody from our culture showing pride, and they knew what it was, meaning that it would just be a fluke chance if it was a learned behavior that they would recognize it. But so this is the kind of research that leads us to believe um, that pride is innate. The expression of pride. Once again, the physical signs. As I started to read this here, um, are a smiling face, raised arms, an expanded chest, and a pushed out torso. Uh, in the pictures shown here, these are two judo athletes in separate matches, showing their response to victory. Um, the one on the left is a sighted athlete, and the one on the right is an athlete who was born blind. And they both expressed their pride through similar behaviors. So that athlete that was born blind, he's never seen others raise their hands or push their chest out or smile when they feel pride. He's never even seen a smile, with his own eyes. Like so, it, this because such similarities occur across cultures. This the we've concluded that the physical expression of pride appears to be biologically based. Now, I just want to point out this type of research. I mean, these are typical types of research that we look at to determine if something is innate and biologically based, or is it learned and culturally based. And so we there are two major types of research that you tend to do. There are others, but the two main ones are, first of all, cross-cultural research. And so I've already talked about that they compared, facial expressions in different cultures and identification of emotions and if a behavior appears the same in every culture around the world, that leads us to believe that it's biologically based or innate. If there are differences from one culture to another, then we tend to think that it is a learned behavior or trait. The other type of research that we often do in situations um, for examination of whether things are learned or innate is we often do um, studies with blind or deaf children, comparing them to normally sighted or normally hearing children. And because, just like this athlete here, like I said, he's never actually seen a smile. He's never seen with his own eyes. He was born blind, like somebody show pride, and yet he's displaying the same body signs and the same facial expression. So we do this kind of research often because if somebody that's blind, does things without ever having seen them before, then probably they were born to do those things. So like obviously a blind child is going to smile when they're happy, and which 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 we know is biologically based. I want to give one example since we recently talked about language in an earlier learning objective. I didn't mention this then, but deaf infants that are born deaf and are exposed to signing during the first, well, during their language development. They go. I always found this interesting. They go through the same sequence of cooing, babbling, one word, the one word phase, the telegraphic speech, but they do it all signing. So they actually sign twos and they sign babbles. And I found that very interesting. Um, so they've never, um, these are infants that have never been exposed to hearing other humans and being born deaf, and yet they go through this exactly same sequence, even though they're doing it by signing. So it kind of shows that sequence of language development. It's not it's certainly innate and biologically based that you go through certain sequence of cooing and babbling and that it's not being picked up from the speech you hear because the deaf child does it as well. Okay, let me go on. Just last slide here of module 3. And this is about display rules. Display rules indicate what emotions to show. Um, so display rules are rules that are learned through socialization and that dictate what emotions are suitable in certain situations. Now, display rules are going to change from society to from one society to another. Things like we learn to be very solemn at a funeral, and there's other cultures where they're singing and dancing and carrying on and laughing and celebrating the person's life. I mean, if that's if that's what the culture does, and then that's how you're expected to be in that culture. In our culture, You better not show up to a funeral laughing your head off and dancing and singing, while the burial's going on or something. I mean, it would be very tacky. I mean, so each society is going to have their own rules for certain kinds of behaviors, certain kinds of events or ceremonies or things like that. When should you show certain emotions? When shouldn't you? Um, One example from your textbook is that Japanese people are less likely than people in North America to display anger or disgust when others are observing them. So those are emotions that they would tend to show in private if they're going to show them. So they're more reserved. They hold in, you know, displays of anger or disgust, and keep it to themselves. Whereas certainly in North America and in the U.S., I'm sure you know, I mean, feel free to display anger to one another or disgust towards one another. The different expressions of the same emotion that we may see in people from different cultures is generally considered to be due to display rules. Um, Also, from culture to culture, display rules tend to be different for women and men. Just males and females tend to show different emotions, even in majority American culture. For example, in a single situation, a woman might show emotion while a man remains expressionless, as in this picture here. However, this does not mean that women experience emotions more intensely than men. What it means is that men and women have been socialized with different display rules within our culture. When when our children are upset, at least in the past, we would tell our daughters, "Oh, go ahead and let it out. Cry your eyes out." And but we would tell our sons messages like, "Oh, big boys don't cry," or "Wipe away those tears," and other harmful messages like that. And then we wonder why our adult males have trouble, you know, communicating and displaying their emotions. Well, it's because we've socialized them that way. Uh, we have gotten somewhat better, I believe, with the way that we raise our males in society, but it, it's still, we're still not doing the job of raising completely emotionally healthy males. Okay. Anyways, so display rules can be between cultures, it can be between genders, and as in the example we just looked at. Um, and that will do it for Module 3, Learning Objective 10. Um, I had, if you looked at the slides I put online, there were two more slides about from 9.12, where having to do with emotions, strengthen your interpersonal relations. I looked through all the test questions that you could possibly get, and they are not covering that section with the test items. Okay, everyone, that will do it for Module 3.